remains your #1 source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from NFL playoffs to pro, college basketball, UFC, MMA, and more. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. With live betting options, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. BetOnline is truly the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite leagues and events. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use that promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts.
Tell them the noise make exception.
Popcorn World. Popcorn World. Yeah. Can I make you move now? Yes, I can. So you can get this move in a bag of a can. I can make it round the world and it holds in your hand. Popcorn World. 250 flavors gonna make you smile. 250 flavors gonna make you smile. 250 flavors gonna make you smile. I said popcorn make you smile. Ah. Popcorn World. Popcorn World. Popcorn World. It's a popcorn world. It's a popcorn world.
We are grateful this morning that his NIL deal closed. Though I think he should have asked for the full $13 million. He kind of undersold himself, much like other people in the nation right now. But he's here, and that's all that matters. So the great CL Brown is joining us this morning.
The $13 million man.
Right. Because apparently the going rate right now is $13 million. So congratulations, CL. We're happy for you, brother.
Which is crazy to even wrap my head around that, you know. And it also is kind of an example of why the NCAA should have got ahead of this NIL stuff when they had a chance instead of trying to fight it, because it's the Wild West, man.
I don't know how you get it back. I don't know how you get it. If 13 million is where we're starting at now, how do you get that back? There's no way to get that back.
You can't really. You can't. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, whatever they did, there was still going to be cheaters going to cheat. So there's still going to be an undercurrent of a wink and a nod, a handshake, you know, we'll get this deal done. But at least then there would truly be rule breakers. Right now, it's like, you know, everybody says
not cheating.
But yeah, they just shrug their shoulders and it's like, you know, it's all legal.
Let me ask this question right off the top, because when I saw that story, the first group I thought about was U of L, who is now 2-16. And I said, how pissed do they have to be to have gone through what they've gone through? And all of that now is legal. It's completely 100%.
Well, not all of it's legal.
Well, listen, there's not much left. Well, okay. There are some parts that are still off the table. But the majority of it, that the things that Louisville was accused of, they can now do with no repercussions. So they got to be looking at this whole situation going, really? Is this what we're doing?
Well, that's why they got off with the Brian Bowen thing, because I mean they basically got off scot-free for that one,
right?
And so, but I mean, it still doesn't make up for the 5 years they had to deal with it. So,
or the year they're having
realize that. People don't realize that when Carolina had kind of that NCAA cloud over their head, Roy Williams was not recruiting the same. I mean, and he even used to allude to it, you know, talking about the amount of McDonald's All-Americans he had for so long, and he's like, I didn't forget how to recruit. They weren't coming because of, you know, the possibilities of sanctions and stuff like that. So that's a penalty without being a penalty that people don't really understand.
Right, especially these fans around here.
Well, I gotta ask this question. I want to start the show off with this because I think it's interesting. I pose this to everybody. Because, you know, during football season, we try to stay engaged in what's happening in football and see it to the end and the whole nine. So I've kind of been a little disconnected from basketball. But the last 2 weeks, I've been fully engaged, and I don't know what I'm watching. Like, I'm seeing, you know, it's not the ACC that I'm used to. Like, I'm used to seeing a couple of dominant teams at the top, some middle-of-the-road teams that could possibly make the tournament, and then the rest, you know, is what they are. I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know what I'm watching. And I'm saying, is this the new ACC? Like, are these new coaches and this new process of transfer portal and everything, is this what we should expect going forward?
Well, I think it's kind of reflective of college basketball as a whole this year. There's no dominant team. You know, there are a lot of interchangeable ones, but the ACC specifically, it's in a valley right now. It's not getting the same kind of talent that we're used to seeing the ACC have. And I think it's reflective of, you know, you see their non-conference play. There haven't been as many marquee wins. You know, the ACC isn't really setting the standard right now. And that's how you end up with a Clemson in first place. You know, this is a year where it's kind of like, to put it in football terms, it's kind of like a year where Clemson or Florida State is kind of vulnerable and having an off year, like this past year. You know, they were, the crown was for the taking, you know, for some of these teams that, you know, in the past have not been able to really compete for a title and get a title. It's like that in basketball right now. So, you know, I would be surprised, even though Clemson is in first place right now, if they finished out that way. I think the schedule kind of helped them along. They haven't had as many tough road games yet, and so they got off to the quick start. But I think they're going to come back to the pack, and, you know, at the end of the day, we'll probably see one of the favorites, Virginia, Miami, North Carolina, emerge as the champion.
So you're saying Clemson's basketball is very similar to Syracuse football.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I would say that's a fair comparison.
That was a dig at me, CL. I'm just gonna tell you the truth. That was a dig at me. I get it.
Quick backstory. When Syracuse had their hot start, one of us on this show,
I believe. I like Dino. I believed.
While the other two on the show pointed out how many home games they had.
That's my fault. Players mess up. You know.
But the team that's that I think we need to be looking at is Wake Forest.
I agree.
I think they have a solid team overall. They have some great pieces, players that they hang their hats on every night. And they can shoot the three, which is something, you know, is very, very good. I just, you never know. I mean, we say that we're down, and it's very similar to in football. We say the ACC is down when everyone's kind of competing against one another, and some of the top or the heavy hitters aren't running the conference. But is it fair to say that it's competitive? Like, we're at a point now where it's competitive, where all the teams are at least have a chance to win, and the blue bloods, in a sense, are they're okay. They're just not the way they used to be, or other teams are recruiting, getting transfers to be able to compete at a high level when some of the blue bloods are still bringing in top high school recruits, but they still need some time to season. That's a question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What?
Go ahead, CEO.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, I think they definitely need some time to season, but when you just look at the rosters on paper right now, I felt like, when you played in the ACC and we don't even have to go back to the 90s. I mean, early mid 2000s, you played in the ACC. You could look at roster and see pros. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Right now, you look on rosters and it's like, maybe on a two-way, and he might be able to fight his way onto, but it's not just like standout like this. Even Duke bringing in, the class that they did, and it was all highly touted and everything. But you look at Derek Lively, who a lot of people believe was the number one player in the class. He's not. I don't think he's turning pro after this year based on this season. I mean, obviously he still could, but
he may want to.
I don't think he's getting picked where we thought he was going to get picked. I'll put it that way.
But
and some of that is due to injuries and stuff. But I just don't think, I don't think the talent is the same.
I'm happy that we're kind of having this, because I mean, I like kids staying in school, one. But most times they end up leaving. Some leave early when they shouldn't leave, but they decide they want to go and test those waters. But I'm kind of happy that we're having some balance in the conference, and other teams are stepping up and have a chance to win. My Seminoles aren't at that level this year, but they had a good win the other night against Notre Dame on the road. I'm just saying, even though they're like 6-13 or whatever,
they beat Louisville.
So it's
not the worst team in the conference.
It's just the fact that I like that there's no one dominant team.
I think the difference is like, it's like you look across the landscape of the SEC and Big 12, they have parity too, but they're all ranked parity, where the ACC's parity is unranked parity, to put in the simplest terms.
I don't know. For me, I think college basketball is better when when every conference has villains. The guys that we have to chase, because they're the standard of what great is, in not only just in the conference, but a lot of times nationally. So I do miss that Duke is not the measuring stick, or North Carolina is not the measuring stick, because it kind of gives you a gauge as to what kind of team you have. Whereas this year, I don't know who you can't, listen. Just when you want to believe in Clemson. Last week, we raved on Clemson. Like, Clemson should be ranked in the top 25. They should be. And then they go and lay
lost on the road to a tough Wake Forest team, though. It wasn't like they went out and lost to LaSalle or somebody.
That's true. That's true.
But they lost to Loyola
Chicago by 19
15.
Points.
Yeah, and that's not a good team. And they lost to South Carolina, which so did Kentucky, but they're not a good team. Those were quad 4 losses. Right. You know what I'm saying? So even with the work that they've done so far in the ACC, those are that's an albatross on their resume come NCAA tournament time, and they'll be, penalized essentially for it.
See, but now let's stay there for a second, because that's an interesting statement you just made. You said those are quad 4 losses. But if we all got the same quad 4 loss, is it really that bad of a loss? Because if this one team that's supposed to be bad,
but nobody else has quad 4 losses in the league.
Well, you just
not nobody else, but I mean the teams at the top don't have quad 4 losses.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying? Like, you lost to, I hate to put it as the worst of the worst, but you lost to teams considered to be the worst of college basketball.
And
right
I mean,
now.
and very easily could have lost that game at home to U of L, to be honest with you. But see, I wanted to ask you, because you right there in it with Carolina, what is going on with them? Because they were so highly ranked coming in. You look at their roster. I mean, I know they've had a couple injuries, but you look at their roster and it's like, there's no way this team should have the record that it has. And they looked pretty good Saturday, but but I mean, what is going on with North Carolina?
Well, there are a number of factors I feel like that have led to them, having 6 losses. Some of it has to do with the schedule itself, because so they were out in Portland for those Phil Knight Invitational games, which were back to back to back, obviously, and there wasn't a lot of time to correct what they needed to do. Hubert Davis couldn't pull them aside for a full practice and kind of tweak what he needed. So you look at that Iowa State game, they had like a 7-point lead with about 4 or 5 minutes left in that game and ended up losing the game. They go through these stretches where I think they kind of lose focus and kind of drift, and are susceptible for other teams coming back. It actually happened the other night against Boston College at home. They led the whole way. They never trailed in that game, but they went from having an 11-point lead to a 1-point game with 6 minutes left to play. That game was up for the taking if they really made some mistakes. But they do have an added gear, and as soon as the game got to 1, they went on a 7-0 run and basically put the game back away. But you shouldn't always have to do that. It shouldn't be a switch you try and turn on and off, because you can't do that against good teams. But they went from Portland basically straight to Indiana. Armando Bacot was hobbled in the second overtime of the 4 overtime loss to Alabama. Mm-hmm. And then he comes and hurts his shoulder early in that Indiana game, and it was basically a wrap from there. So he's what makes them go more than anything else. And then he's out the Virginia Tech game. So they lost that game on the road. And they really didn't have time to really just step back and practice and tweak things. But that's what Hubert Davis did. So after the Virginia Tech game is when they started to look more like what we expect them to. They still are prone to some of these lapses, but they're better. I think more than anything else right now, they need to get Caleb Love. He's in a shooting slump, which really mirrors last year in January. He was also in a shooting slump. And it was funny. I interviewed him for that we ran in a podcast last year in January, and he was still bringing up national championship. And my thought at the time was like, yikes, like I don't see how you have a vision of a national championship right now. And then as it turned out, they were, like 30 seconds to 90 seconds away from actually winning that thing. So if he gets back on track, RJ Davis right now is shooting lights out the last 10 games. He's at 48% from 3-point range. Armando Bacot is still a double-double machine. He's about to break the program record for rebounds, all-time rebounds, and career double-doubles. So all they're really missing right now, I feel like, is getting Caleb Love going.
I want to ask you and Coach Junior a question here. Is what we're seeing in college basketball in the ACC and beyond indicative of what we're seeing on the level that you're coaching at, Charlie? It's like you coach in the high school and AAU world, so to speak. Is that lack of understanding of the totality of basketball and IQ and all of those intangible things that you have to go to the next level, is what we're seeing in college sports indicative of what you're seeing on the level you're coaching at now?
I don't really know. I think we're at a place now where, talent's everywhere and talent's going everywhere. Like, you could have a kid here today and tomorrow they may decide, hey, I want to be here. And he may go somewhere else. And so you're starting to have a lot of that inconsistency. And if you're able to get a group that you can ride with, in a sense, and then add a piece here, a piece there, from whatever it may be, then or guys get better from year to year that's in the program. That plays a big part in, I think, the overall success of a team. And we've been blessed to be able to have some quality players here at Florida State University School that's going on to college. They've been from a high school standpoint, we've been able to develop them. They've been willing to be developed. But I mean, it's just it's a time where you just don't know. Like, I'm sitting here watching, Florida State, and guys are entering the transfer portal, when they go and talk to the head coach about their expectations for their season. And they're saying guys that they're dependent on are saying, we're gonna transfer. We're gonna get in the transfer portal. And it's January. I mean, this is the time when you're getting ready for spring, and they're coming up and saying, I don't want to be here anymore because I can't get what I feel like I want. And so you're having to deal with that consistently. It's hard to start putting pieces together and trying to build a winning program. But I was just sitting back thinking, man, all the money that's in the NIL and all these collectives, this is no different than the professional ranks. Like, coaches can go out and pick free agents, whoever, that's the transfer portal, and now they're giving them deals when they get there. I'm like, this is just a different form of professional sports.
The only difference is you can't make trades.
Well, that's probably coming.
I do want to see that day.
That's probably coming.
I want to see that day.
But let's be real though. Like, it's really been professional sports for a long time when, you're asking kids to play a 9:00 game at Syracuse and then come back and be in class the next day. Like, right. I mean, when first of all, there's no reason why Miami and Syracuse should be in the same conference, you know what I'm saying? And that's not even getting into UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, in another year. But it's really been professional. They just weren't getting paid before, or allowed to make money, I should say.
Right.
Well, it's certainly being allowed now. That's for sure.
Technically, still aren't getting paid like they're supposed to be.
True.
They basically, NCAA GoFunded me salaries for the college players.
Which again, if the NCAA was smart, they could have got ahead of this, and they could have done it in a way where, I still believe that schools should be paying these athletes,
right,
and they should make what they can make, on the open market or whatever. But the NCAA, man, should have just got, if there was anybody progressive and forward thinking, they could have really got a hold on this.
You could have stopped it if the NCAA was smart.
Yep.
Come on, man. Y'all know better. Why are we acting like that's ever going to happen? Like, smart? Come on. You got to stretch it right now. So, question. You're right in the thick of it, CL. Who is actually good in the ACC? Like, who can you look at and say, that team can win an ACC championship, that team can make a run?
Well, somebody got to win it, right?
Well,
every team has flaws. Like, every team had, what first comes to mind to me is Virginia, because they're so consistent, they're so disciplined, but they're prone to these stretches where they can't score, and that's going to come back to haunt them eventually. Miami kind of, I feel like the same way, except, well, not that they can't score, but they're flawed too. And I think, sometimes they get overly reliant on Isaiah Wong, who
here's another 10 years though.
Yeah, here's another NIL example though. Like, so Nigel Pack is making 400,000 this year, 800,000 for 2 years, and he's not delivering what they thought he was going to deliver.
Right.
You know, when he was coming in as a scorer from K-State, and you know, the initial how it played out on social media, you know, and Isaiah Wong was basically asking for a raise. I hope he got one. I hope he's getting one now because he's proved his worth, you know, to that team. But in all seriousness, though, you know, they're a flawed team too. Obviously, Carolina isn't what we thought they'd be necessarily at the beginning of the year. Duke, to me, offensively, I think they're pretty sound defensively, but offensively too, they can't get it together. And if Jeremy Roach continues to have, you know, foot/toe problems and isn't fully healthy, they're really going to be, you know, I think they're really going to be in trouble because I feel like he makes them go. So, you know, out of all of that, if you're asking me to pick a winner right now, I'd probably still go with Virginia.
Not necessarily a winner, but just I think you for me you covered it because I don't know if you can pick a winner. That might be a stretch.
Yeah. I think those are the top 4 teams. I think Wake Forest, I think NC State. I think they're right there in the mix. And you know, if all goes well for them, they could be a surprise. You know, they could kind of get in, definitely be a top 3 team in the league and possibly do some real damage in March. I'm still kind of lukewarm on Clemson. I still need to see more to really be convinced, but it's funny that kind of the coaches coming in on the hot seat, Brown Brunell at Clemson, Kevin Keatts at NC State, Jeff Capel at Pitt. They're proving that, you know, they're going to be around a little bit longer.
All right. I was going to ask you about Keatts because, you know, of course, he was an assistant here in Louisville. Are you surprised with how much patience they've had? I know he's on the hot seat coming in this year, but I mean, coaches usually don't get as long of a line as he's had at NC State.
Well, they've been pretty good early under him, and then, you know, I think where it hurt them was 2019. They didn't get into the tournament because they didn't play a great non-conference schedule. I mean, they were right there. They could have gotten a bid. If they would have got a bid, I don't think too many people would have said, how did State get in? But the committee looked at it and they didn't play a great non-conference schedule. So then 2020, they would have been a tournament team, and, you know, the tournament gets canceled. And so they've also had that NCAA cloud over their head too, with the recruitment of Dennis Smith Jr. and alleged payments made to him and everything. So Keatts actually had a clause in his contract that he ended up getting an extension once all of the, you know, the judgments came down in terms of the NCAA deal. So I think that had something to do with the patience they've shown, you know, the past couple of years when they've been down. But, you know, I always thought he was a good fit there. And, you know, this year he's showing why.
Are we going to see that, though, more now? Because it's almost like if you keep turning over your program that way, especially with the way things are now, because the reality is you can kind of rebuild a whole program within a year or two through the transfer portal if you want to. And so it might be more advantageous to create a more continuity through your program because you can turn it around a little quicker than it used to be. You don't need the whole 4 years now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the smart ADs will be patient, you know, and really it's case to case, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes people aren't a good fit for where they are. And like Kevin Stallings at Pitt comes to mind.
Never understood that from the get-go.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, you're justified in making a quick change, but you also look at fan bases, the temperament it's, you know, it is getting a little less patient and getting shorter lifespans because you look at a situation like Jerome Tang at Kansas State. I mean, I don't remember where they finished in the Big 12 last year, but they weren't good. Obviously it got Bruce Weber ushered out of there. And, you know, Tang has come in and flipped that around quickly. They had the big win the other night against Kansas. They'll be a top 10 team probably next week, barring, this weekend, if they lose or something, maybe not, but they're still top 15.
Right.
So people are going to point. I mean, I'm sure Louisville people are pointing at that.
Yes,
well,
right
that was going to be my next question. That's going to be my next question. How patient can you be when you're having legendary losses? And so I'll ask the three of you guys, is Kenny in trouble already? Like, I know it sounds crazy to say that because he inherited a hot mess, but it's the difference between losing and legendary losing. And he's in the, oh my God, we've never seen this before realm of losing.
But Kendrick, I mean, they've been playing better since the season from the beginning to where they are now. And I mean, I don't watch them that often. I just, of course, watch scores and I hear you guys talking. But I know they've been playing a little bit better than they played at the beginning of the year, which to me seems like that's what we should be focusing on, is the progress, especially in the first year. Everyone's not going to have a turnaround year, in the first year. Sometimes that does happen, but that's far-fetched. In a sense. So I mean, people who are talking, I'm always wondering, like, in their lives, how stable are they? Like, how many marriages have they been through? How many jobs have they've been on? Because when you start thinking about changing over in a year because of what's going on right now, to me makes no sense unless the coach has done something outside of the realm of outside of winning, like some crazy stuff. But if they're progressing in some form in the first year, I mean, there shouldn't even be talks about no hot seat, no getting rid of, none of that kind of stuff. If you see progress, and for me, I've seen enough progress to where I'm like, if you can give somebody some time, like CL season we talked about, if we can give people time to like do their job, at least at some point you feel like they can overcome. Now 5 or 6 years and you haven't really won, then I can understand. But if you're progressing from year to year, then you got to stay with it, because I mean, he has quality coaches.
Yeah.
And now just a matter of getting things rolling, right?
Yeah, Charlie, I mean, like I've said on the show, to the people that actually matter, Kenny Payne's not going anywhere. And like I've always said on here, is like, U of L really can't afford to fire him in the first year anyway. So he's not going anywhere. He's got job security because they can't afford to fire him after the first year. But like you said, there has been some improvement. There has actually last couple of games there's been a little bit of regression. But the thing is, the one thing they're trying to get over with, and see how you saw it against North Carolina. It's like one thing happens, one bad thing happens, and then like 5 bad things happen. Like last night, Pittsburgh came out, knocked down 5. They had a stretch where they hit 5 straight 3-pointers in the first half. But they only led by 9 at halftime. And then U of L got it down to 7 a couple of times. The last time they got it down to 7, Sidney Curry misses a bunny. Pittsburgh rolls out 5 straight points. And next thing is, it's 14 and the game's pretty much over. And so there's that going on. But like, as far as Johnson, Kenny Payne's not going anywhere after 1 year. and CL can speak on it too. Everything that U of L had going against it with coming in, because everybody points to Kansas State. Everybody's like, the transfer portal. Why didn't they get more in the transfer portal? Everything was still hanging over U of L's heads at that point when you can make a move in the transfer portal. And that stuff, people like forget that stuff just got out of that in December. It wasn't like it was in August or June when you can really make a difference in the transfer portal. And so they got what they got. This is a team that lost 13 of their last 18 games or something like that last year, and the 5 best players from that team are gone. So you're left with the backups of that team. And so I always ask, what did you expect? I don't understand I mean, I understand being a little bit upset, and there are some. I'm not totally absolving Kenny and stuff. There's some things that sometimes it's like, come on, Kenny. Like Zan Payne playing in the first half of any game is like, what are you doing? but
man, trying to find a spark.
He's trying to find something. Listen.
But like
you know what's funny though, Kendrick? Nobody questioned Patino when he would play the walk on. You know, whenever. You know
if the walk on is not your son, you're fine. When it's
but
your son,
to that point, though, CL, to that point, Kenny don't have that cachet. He doesn't have that stacked up to where just because you coach with Calipari doesn't mean you work Calipari. So you don't have that. So he may not get the same leash.
Okay, yeah, because Cal's not getting that either.
Well, Cal has lost his cachet as well. He spent up all his currency. So, he's trying to rebuild it back as well, which is weird, but to say about a Hall of Fame guy.
Cal done won 2 in a row.
He's killing it. That's big time in Kentucky right now.
That one was big. I kind of look at Kenny.
Real quick, CL, you living here, you know how it is. They were ready to run Cal out of here. They went 2 games in a row, and they're back to the drive for 9.
Yeah. Final 4. Nothing less.
For UK fans.
I was going to say, though, this year with Kenny Payne at U of L reminds me of Tom Crean's first year at Indiana. And Indiana went 6-25. They didn't have much. They also had the NCAA, knocking at their doorstep and everything. And so the only difference now is the transfer portal didn't exist back then in the way that it exists now. And so I think that has skewed people's expectations, because if there were no transfer portal and Kenny Payne comes in taking over what he took over, then people, obviously they'd still be questioning the margin of defeat in some of these games and looking at it like, man, we're really bad, but they wouldn't be like, oh, we should be better, or we should have gotten or could have gotten some transfers in here and been better fast. And so I think people also need to realize that this is, I feel like, an all-star staff. I mean, Nolan Smith, man, when he was at Duke, he was like, a budding superstar. And I don't think that's changed just because he's at Louisville now. We used to call him the people's champ around here, in Durham. And so they're going to get it together, I think. If anything about this season, I think, it definitely will give Kenny Payne a little bit more urgency in the offseason. But, I don't know that he necessarily even needed it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But he definitely sees he sees how bad it can be. So, he's a competitor and he's not just going to let this ride.
And he forewarned people before the season that, don't set your expectations so high.
Yeah, he knew what he had.
Right. He knew what he's in practice. He sees what he has.
Coach Junior, I want to ask you a question, because you're right there in the middle of it all in Florida State. When is it time to change the voice in the room? Is it have you guys reached that place yet? Because I've never. I mean, this is kind of unprecedented for Florida State, especially a Coach Ham team. So y'all are kind of going through your own thing. And so I've never seen a Florida State team where the defensive message didn't get translated, or it's not translating for some reason. Because normally that's the staple of Florida State basketball. They're gonna D you up, but that's not happening. So what do you think is the reason for that?
I don't know about the change part. Of course, they've had to make some adjustments as they work through the suspension with Baba and some of the injuries that they had to guys that they were going to be dependent on, and their depth. That's essentially, what they hang their hats on is their depth, playing 10, 11 guys to wear other teams down. But my biggest thing has been, they just don't have legitimate scorers that can shoot from the outside. I mean, they got one guy, Green, I think it is, that can stretch the defense. But everybody else is kind of mid-range slasher type of players. And when you don't have the shooting on the floor, it just constricts the floor even more because people in the lane, they're not really concerned about, other guys knocking down threes. And then, defensively, they run up the line. And I said this before, just like Syracuse. Syracuse plays a 2-3 zone, and they've kind of morphed it into, another form of a zone. But when you play Syracuse, you're playing against a 2-3 zone. And everyone has a plan for it, and they distort it, however they're going to do it. And so when you're not willing to adjust in some form of fashion your style, or guys start to understand it and play it a little bit better, whether it's help, whenever you're playing up the line and you get beat backdoor, which is something you're going to get, it's going to happen consistently, then, the guys have to make those adjustments. But if not, you got to try to find a way to adjust as well as a coach. And so Coach Ham has been around for a long time. He's seen a lot of things. And, of course, we all believe in our systems, which is great. And so I think, he's accustomed to having long length on the wings and, in the back line to be able to adjust shots when they come to the basket. Well, I'm sitting there watching some games, and I mean, there's no length at the end of that deal. And you're playing with a bunch of small guys, and whether it's injury or you don't have enough, because he's used to having at least three 7-footers on the team to be able to switch them in and out, but he doesn't have that this year. And so they have to make some adjustments, and hopefully they can, at least finish out this year competing at a high level. But I still don't think they have the range shooting on the floor consistently. They may have one guy out there that can stretch the defense, but outside of that, I mean, it's a hit or miss deal.
Wow. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. ACC basketball at its finest right now. What are we looking at? This is amazing. I want to shift back to football for just a second, CL. Were you as surprised as we were to see the mass exodus of quarterbacks this season at the end of the season? And how do you think that's going to affect this next season coming forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be real interesting, just especially guys like Brennan Armstrong, who stayed in-house, leaving Virginia, but I can understand some of these transfers make sense. Hold on.
DJU. Where did Brendan Armstrong go?
NC State. Why are you making that face?
So essentially, they said, "No, Devin Leary, you're not good enough. We want Brennan Armstrong."
Well, I think Leary left on his own.
As he should.
Yeah. I don't think he was being forced out or anything.
By the way, we're so excited to know that he is going to be in UK, and they think they've got a steal. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm one of these people that I wasn't as big on NC State as a lot of people were coming into the year.
Neither of the other three people on this panel.
Yeah, they had returned a lot and everything, and Larry was back, and people were thinking that maybe he could put together a great campaign. But I'm still with Devin Leary. I'm still like, prove it. Like,
right.
He had some solid numbers, but if when Carolina went in there into NC State, was leading for like majority of that game. They didn't play well to start. They had like a block punt touchdown deal, and and they didn't play well to finish. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, if NC State doesn't come back in that last 2 minutes, an improbable comeback as you've ever seen, then what would the narrative be about NC State? That's the way I looked at it. I didn't look at it like, yeah, they're returning all these people in Devin Leary. So I just thought they were okay anyway, to come in. So we'll see. The thing is, though, he is an experienced guy. So at the very least, he's probably not going to hurt you. Right. But how many games is that winning the SEC? A game manager who's not going to hurt you.
Right. And mind you, a game manager in the ACC.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't know what they saw in him that made him say he's perfect for the SEC.
Well,
I don't get it.
Well, these analysts come out and they rated him as the top quarterback in the transfer portal, and so fans see that and lose their mind. But there is a such thing as being the tallest little person.
Right. Like what are we talking about here? So, there's a reason why these guys are in the transfer portal to start with, right?
Right. So, and I don't think he's a bad quarterback. Like C, I said, he's fine. He's fine. He's a quarterback you look at like I don't think he's going to necessarily lose you a game, but I don't think you're going to go out there and win a bunch of games in the SEC with Devin Leary. And he would be a great quarterback if you had somebody coming behind him. But Kentucky really doesn't have anybody coming behind him either.
No, he's it.
He's the man next year. And so it'll be interesting to see. They did get Liam Cohen back, who was a really good offensive coordinator. He was great for Levis his first year at Kentucky. And so they got him back, and we'll see what the offense is. They'll open it up a little bit more because if you leave because for whatever reason, Mark Stoops let Liam Cohen be Liam Cohen that 1 year. But in the past, he has not let his offensive coordinators really do their thing. So if he lets Liam Cohen do their thing, I think Devin Leary will have a decent season, but I think the expectations are a little bit high for him from the fan base.
Charlie, are you prepared for the resurgence of your Seminoles? Because
we can't be doing this stuff anymore.
No. All of the preseason is saying it's Florida State and Clemson.
What are you talking about?
It's Florida State and Clemson from every preseason way too early to predict poll that's out. It's Florida State and Clemson.
So we can't let them sleep, Charlie.
No, there's no sleeping this time.
They're just sleeping on top of the covers.
All right, sleeping on top of the covers.
They're coming, Charlie, and everybody knows it.
Let us just keep under the radar and keep flashing here and there. But we do have a solid team coming back, and of course the expectation
they're going to be at least top 15.
Yeah, that's over, Charlie. It's over.
Winning 10 games with the majority of the guys coming back, especially the quarterback. To me, that's the key for the team is Jay Trav coming back. Of course, NIL played a big part in that.
This is when NIL worked for you.
What you should do. I mean, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
You're retaining players. Right. That's the way it should work, as opposed to recruiting and recruiting it with it. But defensively, we should be solid. We got, pretty much everybody coming back. We may have lost one guy or a couple guys, seniors and transferred, but or declared for the NFL. It was so the expectation, of course, will be high again, and I think they're accepting it and working towards that. But I'm looking forward to it. At least we know we have a chance.
So
to win every game.
You have a chance.
So I come back to you, CL. Is this the healthiest? Is this the healthiest that the ACC football conference has looked in a while? Because it looks stepping back, it looks like this is going to be a pretty exciting year.
Yeah, and they got rid of divisions, I think, which was a good move.
Yeah,
very good.
And I think them Carolina boys gonna have something to say about it too. When all is said and done, because I think Drake May is the best quarterback in the league, and Mac Brown right now is all of his moves right now are kind of like he's putting all his chips in because May'll be gone after this year. Right. He's got 1 year to make it pop, and so they're returning a lot on offense. He's hit the transfer portal hard. they're going to have basically 20 new guys in spring practice, and I think 8 of those are freshmen who enrolled early, and the rest are coming in a transfer portal. So and initially, Matt Brown's thought was that he would only use a transfer portal if he was going to recruit a starter, like somebody who was going to come in and start immediately. So he was thinking he was going to be very selective early on, but even that in this short time has changed. And so, they're basically going to have a all new transfer portal secondary.
Defense, right? Defense. It's all defense. Right?
Defense. The defense improved over the course of last season, but it wasn't where it needed to be. And the 2 areas that I feel like hurt them the most was the secondary and the defensive line, because the line didn't get enough pressure, and the secondary really never. Whether all of that does work hand in hand, so you leave anybody out there covering too long, they're gonna get picked apart. But the secondary really didn't make any plays. Like, they never really made plays. So yeah, it's I think it's gonna be a fun year in the league. I don't really know right now all of kind of the marquee non-conference matchups, especially to begin the year, because that's really what kind of dictates when we start talking about this conference is good, or this conference is, taking a step up. So the ACC still has to win those games, early September to kind of get people on the bandwagon. But I think it's going to be a competitive year.
The crazy thing is, it's like your boy Rick Bozick, CL. He's reporting that IU is already trying to pull out of their 3-year deal with Louisville.
Yeah,
which was supposed to start this year in Indianapolis. And so, but like, what is like kind of the reaction around the conference to Jeff Brom coming, because he's knocking it out of the park, especially see what he's doing in the transfer portal, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which is a surprise to me.
It's very strange, but yeah,
his teams are so great offensively, but not defensively. But he's really done a good job of solidifying the defense through the transfer portal.
Yeah, I have already switched to basketball mode, so I don't really know what the pulse is, but I was a big fan of that hire. I think it's just different when you got somebody who played at the program who's leading the program, which is why I say Kenny Payne. They need to just be patient and let him do his thing.
Right.
But Jeff Brom is going to bring a different kind of excitement there. That kind of worked out for everybody. Satterfield didn't get chased out of town with pitchforks.
He was close.
He kind of left before anything crazy started popping off. And so and Louisville got their guy. So.
What we need to do is just bring Robbie Valentine back on the show so he can pump up the Louisville fans and remind them of just how great Kenny Payne is.
Nah, we good.
All right. Yeah, what game are you covering this weekend, man? What games are you looking forward to this weekend?
Oh, it's a big one this Saturday, Carolina and NC State. This is the first time in a long time where NC State is coming into Chapel Hill with a realistic chance of winning. Like this will be a real game. Last year, it's kind of funny for all the Carolina struggles early in the season last year. NC State came in during a weekend where they were honoring the 82 national championship team, and MJ was in the building too and talked to the team and everything. And at one point, I think it was a 35-point lead Carolina had. Like, they didn't stand a chance. Even though Carolina had been struggling, it was a wrap. So
that's what happened to Jordan 1s right before the game.
Yeah, exactly. Saturday, ironically, they're going to honor the 93 national title team. But there's no MJ on 93, so I don't know how hyped you get. I don't know if it's going to be the same kind of adrenaline pumping. And MJ was courtside, like literally he's sitting there, seeing these guys hoop. So that's a different kind of, you get pumped up. That's like wearing them new sneakers on field day in the 4th grade. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm gonna run fast.
All right, you run faster. There you go. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, that should be a good one. That should definitely be a good one. We're all in now, so we're all watching. We're going. I can't wait to see how this finishes up. I'm be honest with you. I'm very curious to see what February and March looks like in the ACC, because I feel like we're going to see some weird surprises toward the end. Like, if I had to predict somebody to win the conference, I don't know if you could. I don't know if you could legitimately say, "Oh no, Virginia's going to win it for sure," or Clemson. I definitely don't believe Clemson is going to win. Fool me once, shame on me. In the words of George Bush, fool me twice, never be fooled again. I can't go with that. So I don't know. I just honestly don't know what we're looking at, but it should be fun, if nothing else, to see how it all unfolds. So, CL,
Wake Forest is a dark horse.
That's Wake Forest is the one team you look at, and over the last 2 weeks that I've been watching, you go, they don't look breakable. Like, they look like they are what they are. They know who they are. They're going to do what they do. And that's kind of what you want in January. You want to be turning that corner, and you should have all that figured out. Shouldn't be any more questions as to what you are anymore. And I don't know if that's true about the rest of the conference.
They're going to have to be able to do it on the road as well. I know the last few games they've had have been at home.
Right.
Which, is always great. So it'd be interesting to see how they compete on the road against quality teams. So that's something to watch for as well. Wake Forest, I'm talking about.
Yeah. All right, CL, you are our guest today. We do shout outs at this point of the show. Who you shouting out today, brother?
Shout out to my mama.
Wow.
In March. You know what I'm saying? Little known fact about my mom. My mom was at one point the number one ranked. Back then, it was Negro female tennis player. She got invited to a camp with Arthur Ashe and the whole nine. My mom was not to be played with on the tennis court, for real. Yeah. Right. Carolyn Archie.
Did she pass that trait down to young CL? Is CL?
You know what? I'm the youngest of 5, and I just remember I was too young for tennis lessons when my other 4, my 2 brothers and 2 sisters were able to play, and they got new sneakers when they got them tennis. That's all. I just wanted some new sneakers. But when I was old enough, like it was like she didn't push me towards it, and everybody else, after they took them lessons and stuff, they really stopped playing too. So so I just never picked it up, which I when I look back, I kind of regret. I would have. I would have liked height, to just
you
have
could have
toyed
been.
with it.
I was gonna say you would have been pretty
height and length.
Yeah. So all y'all did this.
I don't know if you've met CL, but CL's like 6'4".
6'3".
No, he's not 6'4".
He's 6'3".
He's right under me. He don't do that. He's right.
He's not long
it's
on
funny,
his arms and legs.
I met Charlie when Florida State played at Carolina your senior year at Florida State, and one thing that I regretted about my undergrad life, I was the co-editor of the Black student paper on campus, and I had planned on doing this issue on the Black athlete. And I told Charlie about it. It was like post-game locker room when you could still get in, they have everything, there are very few teams that let you in the locker room now. But back then we got in, and I told Charlie about it, and he gave me his number and everything. And I appreciate that, Charlie, even though I'd never followed up, because it was just, I was trying to do it by myself and it was too overwhelming. But that was my brush with greatness.
Well, I'm glad we can reunite you old friends. I didn't realize. That's what's up.
I'm not sure about the greatness part, but I'm grateful.
This guy. You know what, Charlie? You've been real good lately, but come on now. I don't want to. Right, Kendrick. I'm like on the line with it now.
It's only put one arm up.
I'm just saying, Charlie. Let's not, Come on, let's.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Charlie, you're playing a dangerous game right now. You're playing a dangerous game. All right.
All right, CL, have you completed your shout outs?
Yeah. Just my mom is good.
That's a good one.
Just so they won't be tripping. Well, I'm just gonna go. My shout out is our basketball team. We're 16-1 right now, and so I'm shouting out our basketball team, our boys basketball team here at Florida State University School. Very proud of those guys. Of course, in any season, you have to go out and compete, regardless of who you're playing, and so. I'm very proud of the effort that they've given, the attention to detail. And it's, we do have a home run hitter, which is going to Missouri, but we have balance. The other night he had 4 points, and we still won the game by 15 points because we had other guys step up that usually don't hit double figures. So I was very proud of that because I know at some point, he's averaging 20 points, so he's going to get aggressive and he'll make his shots. But I was so happy to see the balance that we have with the other guys who stepped up. And so I'm just giving a shout out to our team and kind of the place where we are. We still have room for improvement, but, you're still at a place where you're winning games and you're able to correct those things that you need to get better at. And they're willing to do it, which is always a great thing. So I'm not leaving anytime soon, CL.
He's got job security.
Coach, is it easier to coach a team on the backside of the mountaintop? Because you've won it and they know and they've experienced it. So it's kind of like the message it's a little clearer because they see you've done it. They know what you're talking about.
I don't know if it's easier, but the culture is definitely different. And you can point towards, what it takes. And the guys that's been here that was a part of it last year. And even just going through, the message has always been the same, which is, we're going to compete at a high level. And when it's all said and done, you got to play your best when your best is needed. And that's no different this year. There was no different last year. We just got hot at the right time. And we were able to win games. But it comes down to the little things and, putting pressure on guys, challenging them to be better. And there's no different this year. So last year was last year, and this year's a totally different team in a sense. But the challenge is to play at your best when your best is needed.
Shout out to Charlie Ward, who's becoming the Deion Sanders of high school basketball. He's on his Deion Sanders trajectory right now. It must be a Florida State thing. I don't know. But
and his bags are Louis.
No, mine aren't Louis. I don't know what they are. They're just some old generic bag.
Just generic bag. Just throw it in something to keep going. All right, Kendrick, what are you doing, brother?
I'll give a couple of shout outs. First, shout out to Ballard High School. They won the LIT this past week. They have a brand new coach, Greg Willis. He's his first year as head coach. You remember Chris Renner was at Ballard forever. Oh, yeah. But Greg Willis he's been an assistant at Ballard. He played at Ballard. So this dude is has Ballard written all over him. Talk to him at the end of the game. Dude was so happy to win the LIT. The LIT is essentially the city championship around here, and so big shout out to him. And then shout out
is Ballard where Allen went.
Yeah, your buddy Al.
Let's see. You were this close, Charlie. You were this close.
I'm just trying to get some.
No, I can't let you slide with that one, Charlie. I can't.
And that was a Charlie Ward humble flex.
Yeah, you were so close.
I was asking if that was where Al went.
We don't call him. I don't call him. I went to school with him, and I don't call him Allen. That's Allen Houston. That's how I know it.
His buddy Al.
His buddy Al. You see that, Charlie? You see that, CL? That's how he does this.
And then my other shout out is
you got a whole clip for that. That's
and it's amazing how many times a week it runs.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
But my other shout out is for.
Now, see, I was trying to
win a
cordial.
little playoff game.
I was trying to be cordial, and now you come on doing that.
I was going to say something earlier. You saw Kendrick had his little glass.
I had that every week.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it, ACC today. I purposely put on something different, but I got the gear in the other room. Don't do that.
You can't bring out your.
Listen, if anybody ought to be shouting out their team, it should be me.
You can't bring your Giants
surprised
gear
y'all
out
have
on
your
me.
Giants hat on.
I started to, bro, because I'm listening. I'm in a good place.
We celebration of the NFC East.
It is okay. Then let's do that then, because you on that line, kid. I'm just saying.
Hey, we swept you.
Okay, all right.
But
I praise God, y'all win this weekend, and we win this weekend.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
But hey, it's been 30 years. 30 years since they won a road playoff game. They deserve a shot.
That's insane to even say that out your mouth.
It's insane. 30 years. It's crazy.
Jimmy Jones put that hex. He did the.
He did this right. Yeah.
Until you do right by me.
Yeah.
He's not even in the Ring of Honor, is he?
I was gonna say, did he go in the Ring of Honor this year or not?
Oh man.
No, Jerry said he was gonna put him in there, but he hasn't. And Jimmy's like,
they're definitely losing this weekend. They're definitely losing this weekend until he do right by. Listen,
they broke one hex. They broke one hex, the road thing. So.
And it took them 30 years to do it. So I guess
30 years.
What's the math on that? 2053, they'll get back to the Super Bowl.
You just baby steps. We've taken the first step.
I don't know you call that baby steps. That's like snail steps. Like what are you talking about?
Hey. You've been getting swept by Dallas for years. You stop it over there.
I'm getting swept with Super Bowl wins under my belt. I'm not getting swept like
you still don't have 5. So you stop it over there.
This might be the year. You never know.
You know it's not the year.
We finally have a quarterback. Okay, you know what? My shout out is to Daniel freaking Jones.
All right, Daniel
Believe
Jones.
in the ACC.
We finally found our quarterback. We found a shout out to Duke football for creating a monster in Daniel Jones. Who knew that Duke football is where we find the success of the Eli Manning? Which, by the way, Daniel Jones is literally Eli Manning 2.0. Like exact same demeanor, exact same. I'm not too high, I'm not too low.
Except
he's a better runner. Now, he's a much better runner than Eli ever could have hoped to be. But he's just, it's the exact same quarterback.
They might want to stop running them like on design quarterback runs.
I'm not a fan of that, Charlie. I ain't gonna lie. I don't really love that.
Yeah, that one drive when he ran like 70 of the 85 yards on the drive was insane.
You hold your breath the whole time, like, oh, what are you doing? And he's like, okay, he got up. That's good. It's a weird thing, but I get it. He's a big dude. So, but shout out to Daniel Jones. I give him a legitimate shout out today. That was pretty impressive. But I'm looking forward to playoff football. Shout out to playoff football, man. It's been great. This was an amazing weekend, and this weekend should be no different. So it should be fun.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
I this just hit. CL. We're talking ACC.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson?
Great question, Charlie. Whoa.
I think both Lamar and Baltimore fumbled the ball on this. They should have had him signed before the season even started. It's kind of funny though. I feel like Cleveland inadvertently sabotaged their AFC North rival.
They
by
did.
signing Deshaun Watson for that guarantee. Because once he saw that, how can you ask for anything less? But I either think Lamar should have held out. Any way you looked at it, I feel like the deal should have been done before he started playing this year. And so now I kind of feel like I don't know that he can go back there. Like I don't know that they're going to be able to work this out. So which is a shame because I feel like they've always believed in him, and they haven't they haven't put enough weapons around him, but I felt like that goes to how much they believed in him because they thought he could just win with anything around him. But
and they put anything around him.
And he has. And realistically, he has. He's done it. It's just not what, But it's hard to complain about a marriage that you won't help fix.
He's worth it, though. Just pay that man and keep it moving, or else you're basically going to take a step back. Their franchise isn't that far from, competing at the highest level for a Super Bowl. So, I mean, they're obviously in the playoffs. So, yeah, they're not that far. But, you got to have that quarterback.
And the craziest thing, the laziest argument I hear about it is like, well, the way he plays, he's an injury. Every time he's gotten hurt, it's been in the pocket. He has not gotten hurt when he's been running around.
It has nothing to do with his running.
and most quarterbacks, surprise, surprise, get hurt in the pocket. The one time Tom Brady got hurt was in the pocket. I mean, it happens. Jalen Hurts got hurt in the pocket. He wasn't running around. Yeah. So I get so sick and tired of hearing that argument about the way he plays is why he gets hurt. It's like he hasn't got hurt when he's running the ball.
Yeah. Well, this has been all kinds of fun, as we knew it would be. The NIL check is in the mail. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I'm sure it is in the mail. I take all checks, so. That's good. Hey, that's good to know. So with that being said, thank you guys for listening. This is BLEAV in the ACC. We will see you guys next week. We'll do it all over again. You've been listening to BLEAV in the ACC with Charlie Ward, Lloyd Spence, and Kendrick Haskins. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share from the Noisemakers page on Facebook and on YouTube. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can